talking about processes that allow us to harness public participation to dramatically improve the chances of your plan being adopted and implemented. Okay, so folks that don't necessarily have an updated community plan already are kind of who I'm talking to here. Okay, it should be known that Century Code suggests that zoning regulations are only allowed through an adopted comprehensive plan, regardless if you call it a comprehensive plan or a master plan or a community vision or whatever you might call it. Zoning powers are granted through that. So you need to have an updated future land use plan, which is what comp plans often prepare. Okay, and when we looked around at kind of northwest North Dakota, we concluded that there was about 100 jurisdictions, including all the unincorporated towns and incorporated towns, cities and counties. But we also concluded that probably 80 or 90% of those places did not have updated community plans, which are very important for them to have if they want to use the powers of zoning, etc. There's these halos of growth that you see around basically all towns, pressure to double in size regardless. We have collected for this webinar a bunch of materials that are intended to help you do a plan if you don't have a plan, or continue to develop one for those that do already. Because clearly plans that don't get adopted and implemented are kind of a waste of time. You can dramatically improve your chances of getting your plan both adopted and implemented by demonstrating continually that the citizens themselves are participating, that are really influencing the process. The comprehensive plan is the citizens' plan. You know, elected officials and staff come and go. This is the way citizens who are there for the long haul direct staff and elected officials about how to arrive at a future of their choosing at some point in time. And it's no secret that fingerprints throughout the design process is what convinces participants in these plans that it is their plan that they're adopting and implementing. And that's critical to the long-term success of the plan, okay? We're really going to be talking about kind of the public engagement process only. Lots of tasks exist before and after that public engagement process, but we're talking about how to use the public engagement process to demonstrate huge support, okay? This planning process, wasn't invented here, even though it was used in Williams County. It really has gotten an awful lot of attention over the last few years, both in planning journals as well as other kinds of journals as well. So this isn't a new invention. It's kind of tried and true. There's a 3-meeting process, okay, as well as what happens between those meetings. Now, what I want to talk about is kind of where public values were included. The idea is to create this future land use plan. You see the red arrow there. And ultimately, that is included in the document along with chapters, plan elements, transportation, recreation, education, economic development, and so on. All of those chapters have a structure that is something like existing conditions are, desired future is, and steps to achieve. In order to, that in a nutshell is kind of what, comp plans are. In the first public meeting, it's all about broad public value input. So surveys were done that literally informed the analysis maps that are used. Both landscape sensitivity and growth efficiency were built on values collected in public surveys, as well as the goals of the project, which become how we measure success as we move through the process. The second public meeting was physical planning, where citizens were asked to prepare a land use plan that accommodated some 11,000 homes, okay? And these were conducted in towns all around the county. But the idea is to quickly do a plan, evaluate it, and learn from that. And you'll see how we did that as I go through this slide. And finally, that very last third meeting is about choices. These inform informed participants can now make decisive decisions about which plans and strategies seem to work the best for them. Okay? So here's an example of a public survey that was done where citizens rated 5 very important, 1 not very important. In this case, it is the criteria by which you would evaluate public facility, the importance of public facilities. Oh, you do want to live next to an elementary school, but you want to live far away from an airport or something like that. Another question there deals, again, the same weighting sort of logic, but it talks about problem and hazard and resource plans and gets that sort of the environmental, that kind of landscape sensitivity component. Okay? And here were goals that ended up being solicited from a survey that looked like this. If this plan does nothing else, it needs to, finish the sentence, and basically compiling that stuff together in order to enable us to create that set of goals back there. And they enjoyed, huge levels of support throughout the 3-meeting process that we were involved in there. They strongly agreed that they were appropriate. As well as, emergency response became kind of critical. And who paid for the cost of future development? Was it citizens or the developer? And the plan should be adhered to unless there's clear public benefit to deviate from it in some way. And again, those 2 maps, you can see over here, growth efficiency and landscape sensitivity, were considered appropriate ways of defining locations for future growth, okay, appropriate future locations. Now, and likewise, those 2 maps were literally based on century code, where the purposes for zoning for the duly adopted comprehensive plan lessen government expenditures, but that's growth efficiency. And manage natural resources and so on, that's the problem hazard and resource plans that you see here as well. But you can start to see these dark green areas are where the highest level of the growth efficiency is. Later on, I have a section that will talk about this in more detail, whereas the landscape sensitivity map is sort of cumulative floodplains, wetlands, steep slopes. You start to see red are bad places for growth. You see an awful lot of green because there's an awful lot of very developable places. Okay. The next step was in public meeting number 2 starts to utilize that information. These 2 maps that were prepared, both landscape sensitivity and growth efficiency, contributed to this series of scenarios that citizens developed. Okay, so we called it a game. We've noted in the past that sometimes land use planning makes people grumpy, so we call it a game and keep reminding them that they're having fun, and that often works quite well. Here's citizens and a civic class of kids participating in this game. We also told them that there was going to be winners and losers, and there was going to be one game out of the entire county that did better than all the rest, and we then have a conversation about why. And you can see here that there are the resources that they had developed previously from public meeting number 1. There's sensitive lands on the map and growth efficiencies on tables. So citizens were aware of that, and it informed where they chose to grow in the future. Okay, citizens presenting their work. Likewise, when they finished the game, they were asked to self-evaluate. If you look over here, it's literally a recipe about how to win the game. If you place your future development in ways that conform to these goals and objectives, you're going to perform quite well. We asked them to sort of self-evaluate that process. Here was the chip set used. Literally, each of these here little squares were a mile in size and fit the map. So you could use 10-acre lots or 5-acre lots or clusters, kind of a suburban development or even urban kinds of density, as they played the game. Here's literally the game boards themselves, photographs from Granora, where 4 tables played the game one evening, but they were actually all encoded into the computer so that we could do some evaluations. There was 4 games in Granora, 6 in Ray, Tioga played 4, Williston played 8, Trenton played 2, and this grid, which is where they played those, literally became something that we could evaluate the results on. These red areas here, this is where people put all of the majority of their housing chips. Okay? What's amazing about that is that for you people that know Williams County is this is a darn good plan. This exactly where we want growth to go. And it's an easy sell to make that this is your plan, citizen participants. This was your idea, and they begin to develop ownership in it, quite dramatically. And if you start to look at it, very few people use 5 or 10 acre lots. 3/4 of the future development was either high density residential or 4 dwelling units per acre suburban. So literally 3/4 of the future development requires sewer in order to accommodate it. A very good way to approach it. Here are quickly the kind of digital maps that we encoded, okay, and gave us the ability to then, just clicking a little fast or something. Williston's games, so on, and then we can evaluate. You can see on this one here how many houses all 24 tables played. Some people got a little bit carried away, some people underperformed, but this is the amount of ag land that was disturbed by those various developments. We go on and look at vehicular miles traveled. Each and every table was evaluated for the amount of miles it would take in a day to go back and forth. Here's proximity to existing development. Citizens said development shouldn't be by itself. It should be adjacent to other development. And that's how you can measure it. How many wetlands and how close you are to emergency services were all considered for all of these, as well as those efficiency scores from that map and that landscape sensitivity as well. We literally brought all of this information up and we chose winners. I mean, all 4 of these were good examples, and we talked about why these outperformed all the others, how some of these land use patterns did a much better job of accomplishing our goals and objectives than others did, okay? And, finally, the consolidation of this into sort of a preferred future. There was 4 alternatives put together by the consultant that included existing trends, all towns grew, big new town sort of approach, or the majority growth went to Williston. I see that there were some images that sort of fell off of that, but this is how the various land uses under the various land use scenarios were treated, okay? And here was some images of what they looked like. Here was the existing trend map that was kind of tailored after the existing zoning map in some ways. But here's all towns grow, and growth areas were first introduced. I'll show you a few of those growth areas because they're a big concept. There's really growth management idea here that synchronizes market system forces with the community desires. Instead of regulating, if we point at areas and call them growth areas, then we really are encouraging speculation to occur in and around these towns where we want it to occur, okay? And scenario C here becomes sort of that new town approach where a lot of the growth was placed in one place along with all the infrastructure it takes to, not diminish the level of service. And then the big towns, Williston, can we actually create enough critical mass that, we have a Hard Rock Cafe or some of the other kinds of amenities of some kind. The notion was that these were all then evaluated by the same set of benchmarks. So even these scenarios prepared by the consultants were evaluated for how many acres they consumed and what the efficiency score was and how landscape sensitive and emergency services and, proximity to other development and farmland and wetlands and so on. I want to try to explain all the vehicular miles traveled, okay? The notion is that they made informed choices. We had all of this conversation about how all of these prepared and talked about what the implications were of being able to direct growth to those areas, what all was needed. And finally, there was a set of questions, and this begins to show you the amount of support that was given to various, concepts. Here, even if regulations are required in order to direct growth, there was huge levels of support for directing growth to the most appropriate places, and huge amount of support for this growth area concept that synchronizes market forces with the community design. So demonstrated support by all those participants, and it was unanimously adopted by the county commissioners, and they're using this today. I better quit there. I think I'm a little bit over time.
That was great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve Mullins, for the presentation on the work that was done in Williamson County. Great example. We'll come back to some of those things, I think, later on. Again, if you have questions or comments to enter in the chat pod, we'll